immediately establishing a central pawn spear. This opening gambit promises dynamic central control and opens diagonals for early piece development. Opens the door for a flexible development, immediately challenging white's central ambition and preparing to contest key squares. Asserting central space aggressively, white immediately challenges black's knight's influence. Solidifying the center and preparing for rapid development, black embraces a classical Queen's Indian setup, aiming for a balanced game. Developing the knight to c3 solidifies central influence and prepares for further kingside expansion, aiming to control crucial squares. Challenging white's central grip and opening lines, this develops a piece actively towards the queenside. Solidifying the center and preparing to develop the kingside pieces efficiently opens up avenues for queenside pressure later. Initiating a fianchetto allows black to influence the long diagonal, aiming for counterplay against white's central control. Aims to redeploy the knight for central influence, preparing kingside castling while avoiding immediate complications on the queenside. Developing the bishop to its longest diagonal now prepares kingside castling while contesting the important central light squares. Challenging black's bishop's influence on the long diagonal is a key priority now. Solidifying the bishop's position prepares for the inevitable queenside pawn thrust, gaining crucial breathing room. Boldly seizing central space, this pawn thrust initiates a dynamic fight for the initiative. Safely tucking the monarch away, black prioritizes king's safety amidst the central pawn push. Steering the knight towards the kingside offers support for a potential pawn storm, while consolidating white's central presence. Reinforcing the center and preparing to challenge white's pawn chain is a sound strategic endeavor. Fortifying the central pawn structure allows for future kingside expansion and prepares to contest the center. Challenging white's central pawn structure opens up lines, aiming to disrupt their pawn chain and create dynamic play. Asserting central control, white aims to shatter black's pawn structure and secure a commanding presence. The knight awkwardly retreats, sacrificing any ambition to contest the center's crucial central squares. Liberating the d-file and opening attacking avenues after black's pawn structure commitment. Reclaiming the pawn opens lines, putting pressure on white's center and challenging piece activity. Expanding on the queenside gains important territory and prepares a potential pawn storm against black's undeveloped kingside. Repositioning the knight to c7 aims to bolster the pawn chain on the queenside and potentially support a future advance on the queenside. Castling brings the king to safety, preparing for central pawn pushes and solidifying the queenside. Bringing the queen to the queenside aims to redeploy it and support the c6 pawn, while also potentially eyeing the b-file. Solidifying the central pawn structure, this bishop redeployment prepares for potential kingside pressure while maintaining excellent piece coordination. Unlocking the queenside is the key, but this pawn push might overextend the defense, creating weaknesses. Exploiting the queenside weakness, this pawn thrust aims to shatter black's pawn chain and seize open lines for attack. Sacrificing pawn structure for queenside counterplay, aiming to disrupt white's expansion. This pawn thrust aggressively claims more territory, forcing black's pieces to react to the sudden expansion on the queenside. Reclaiming the c6 square with the bishop offers better defensive coverage against white's aggressive kingside pawn advance. Clearing the central squares now allows white to dominate the open b-file and threaten the queen. Striking at the center immediately opens lines, a bold gamble for queenside counterplay. Opening the center with this exchange grants your pieces greater freedom of action. Seizing the center with the knight drastically alters the pawn structure and opens tactical possibilities. Unlocking the center's potential, this capture opens lines, forcing black into a precarious defensive posture. Now the knight assumes a central role, challenging white's pawn chain and preparing to unlock the queenside. Unlocking the d-file suddenly demands attention, potentially creating lasting structural weaknesses for black's queenside pawn chain. Liberating the bishop from the e7 pawn chain unlocks potent diagonal pressure against white's king. Unleashing a knight's diagonal power opens up lines for attack towards the black king. Liberating the queen from that blockade allows for much more dynamic counterplay. Sacrificing a pawn to unleash knight dominance and seize the initiative across the queen side. Sacrificing the pawn opens a diagonal for the queen and initiates a sharp tactical sequence, but it also exposes the king significantly. Shattering black's central pawn shield, this exchange creates immediate tactical complications around the black king. Recapturing the bishop forces a structural shift, potentially opening lines for your rook. Unleashing the rook to seize the open file and pressure the king side. Exposing your king's defense to create this open g-file feels like a desperate gamble, though it does activate your rook. Unleashing a devastating discovered attack, white forces a desperate king escape while disrupting black's pawn structure. The king ventures onto a precarious diagonal, creating potential escape routes but also inviting further threats. Exploiting the weakened king side, this redeploys the queen to target weaknesses created by the pawn structure. Recapturing the pawn reopens lines, but the king's safety is now a serious concern with the open g-file. Recapturing the pawn with the queen immediately threatens the weak pawn on f6 and uncovers the rook on a3, creating attacking potential. Shifting the queen to defend the f6 pawn subtly fortifies black's weakened kingside structure. Retreating the queen to safety preserves valuable material and prepares for future exchanges. Securing the open d-file is crucial now, threatening to flood white's territory with rooks. Targeting a vulnerable king with fresh attacking energy, this move prepares to exploit the open g-file for a decisive assault. Bringing the rook into the fray, this move prepares to contest the open g-file and apply pressure on white's king. Securing the crucial central file opens avenues for a powerful rook lift and further pressure on black's weakened king. Rethinking the attack, black brings the rook to the open file, reinforcing the pressure on the weakened king. Sacrificing the rook opens a dangerous diagonal toward black's exposed king. Opening the g-file might seem appealing, but it exposes your king to immediate danger. Breaching the kingside pawn structure creates immediate attacking chances. Doubling rooks on the g-file promises no immediate breakthrough against white's central pawn structure. Unlocking the h-file offers a direct assault on black's exposed monarch. This pawn capture finally resolves the immediate material imbalance and forces white to confront a precarious king position. Unleashing a mating threat, the queen dances into a devastating attacking position. A cunning attempt to untangle the rook and create counterplay on the queen's side. Pressuring black's queenside pawn chain, aiming to crack open the position. Relocating the rook to the g-file aims to create potential counterplay, but it leaves the kingside pawn structure significantly weakened. Re-engaging the queen on the kingside offers dynamic attacking chances, aiming to exploit the weakened kingside pawn structure. Re-establishing peace activity is paramount. The queen now threatens invasion on the weakened kingside. Focusing the queen on the central files now seeks to exploit black's awkward pawn structure and exposed monarch. Reawakening the queen's potential on the g-file, this aims to disrupt white's pawns and generate new attacking avenues. Unlocking the g-file for the rook, this move aims to exert pressure on the weakened kingside pawn structure. The queen's repositioning opens avenues for initiative, aiming to exploit the weakened kingside pawn structure before white can consolidate. Targeting the weak king with combined queen and rook pressure now presents a mating threat. Gaining space on the kingside with this pawn push attempts to disrupt white's attacking formation. Unlocking the queenside pawns creates immediate pressure on black's position. Opening the queenside is a desperate gamble. It sacrifices crucial pawn structure for potential counterplay that may arrive too late. Opening a fresh avenue to the black king's defenses. Securing the queenside pawn chain offers some respite, though the king remains exposed to the lurking rook.